Hello and welcome to our daily roundup of the latest news from the Africa Cup of Nations. Thank you so much for joining us. Saturday saw Nigeria's Super Eagles soar into the knockout stage with a 3-1 victory against Sudan. It also saw Egypt sneak into second place in the group, saved by star striker Mohamed Salah and by VAR, which ruled out a last-minute goal by Guinea-Bissau. Joining me to talk about all of the day's action is France 24's James Vasina, who is in Douala, and African sports journalist Usher Komugisha, who's been covering the tournament for Sky News. Thank you both so much for being here. James, we're going to start with you. After today, Egypt is back on track to make it through to the next round, but just barely.
Yes, Alison, only just a win that really just came from the end of the game, and one that really could have been very different after that goal that you mentioned there was disallowed. Guinea-Bissau, who equalised just 10 minutes before the end of the game. Mohamed Balde, who'd left from the left corner and managed to put in an absolutely stunning goal into the top right of that Egyptian net. But he was judged to have committed a foul in the build-up for that, as he battled against Amar Kamal for the ball just before. One thing that really gutted their side when they actually thought they'd equalised and thought that their chances were going to go much further. Now, the thing is, though, that for Egypt, they've had to wait until the 69th minute to finally get that first goal of the tournament. Mohamed Salah putting in a brilliant volley, has to be said, but this just goes to show you all the struggles that they've gone through and that they're still going through at the moment. Mohamed Salah, a top-class player who's flying, of course, at Liverpool, and one that we would expect might be able to lift his team, but that's not always the way that things go. You might have a brilliant player, you might have a brilliant striker, but when you think of others such as Lionel Messi, of course, that isn't always the case. So the issue here with Egypt is that, of course, today they were playing statistically a weaker side, but how is it going to look for them when they go up against much tougher opponents?
Well, as you said, James, Egypt has really been struggling a lot more than they were expected to. Usher, I'd like to hear from you. What are Egypt's biggest concerns, do you think, going forward in this tournament?
Well, obviously, when you think about them having a new coach in Carlos Queiroz, who came into the side just a few weeks ago. He's been trying to set up the team, not necessarily in a way that they were set up in the qualifiers. He's trying to play Mohamed Salah out of position. He said he wanted to shock Nigeria with that lineup. But today we started to see Mo Salah's brilliance, the kind that we see at Liverpool in the Premier League, in the Champions League. And you can see that he was rewarded eventually with that goal. Obviously, he's building the team around him, and every opponent knows that, and so they try to keep him out of the game. So it will take a lot of individual brilliance, of course, from him, but the team needs to dig deeper. You have to get more of the players involved in terms of how they run when they have the ball, because they are a counter-attacking team, and I think it's just really a matter of them growing into the tournament. Most of the teams in this AFCON 2021 did not have good preparations, less than a week to prepare for the trip to Cameroon. They had some COVID cases before they left Cairo, but things are going to get better. They're a team, I think, that will grow with time, and we'll see their quality later on.
Yeah, it does seem that Egypt is starting to warm up. As you said, they're going to have to dig even deeper. Stay with us, both of you. We're going to move on to talk about the day's other game that saw Nigeria secure their spot in the knockout stages with a 3-1 win against Sudan. Football fans in the Nigerian capital were happy with the result, even if they were disappointed that the team ended up conceding a goal. Take a listen.
The underrated Sudan, about second half when they were leading by 3-0, and which led Sudan to put one in, which was not even a killer penalty, but the referee still gave it to them. But I think they did well overall. They performed really well.
This particular match, we knew it was going to be easy, but we needed to be consistent, because one of the problems we have with the Nigerian team is consistency.
I believe that no other country can be good more than Nigeria in terms of football, because we have all it takes. You can see our boys today, they perform very well and they make us happy.
James, let's go back to you. Nigeria is one of the 2 teams that's qualified with all 6 possible points so far. Can we consider them the favorites at this point?
Alison, I think at this point we can absolutely put them in that box of favourites. They were impressive the first time round, having only scored a goal, but keeping that lead when they needed to. Today, they performed and did exactly that. No changes to their lineup, showing exactly the force that they have. And again, scoring very early on, Chukwueze putting in that goal for them. And then brilliant, just a brilliant game all around from Iheanacho to Ndidi. There's a very solid squad there, and it has to be said, there's a mix of new and old. And what's is really impressive about it is that with all this, they've managed to put together a team that really looks like one of the big forces out there. Adding to that, just a month before the start of the tournament, they parted ways with their former coach. That was the German Ruhr, who was subject, of course, of a lot of discontent for Nigerians as to what had been achieved in the previous times. They've managed to bring all that together, and it is working. They look solid, and with the great news from today means that they're going to be able to take things nice and easily in their next group game before heading into that round of 16. So I think to answer that question, we can definitely put them along with all those favourites there, Alison.
All right, well, let's take a look ahead next to Sunday because we have a very big day coming up. It kicks off with a showdown between Group F's top teams, Mali and the Gambia, which have 3 points each. Now, the Gambia are tournament newcomers who started off quite strong with a win against Mauritania. Mali also played a very strong opening match against tough competitors Tunisia, but their victory was overshadowed by the referee blowing the whistle too early multiple times. Usher, let's come to you next. Tell us, what are you expecting out of tomorrow's Group F matches, and do you think Tunisia can turn things around?
Well, it's very interesting, this group, because when you look at Mali, they've not conceded a goal since June last year. So they've kept 7 straight clean sheets. So they're very difficult to break down. They are the only team that has not conceded in the World Cup qualifiers so far. Like, that is an incredible record. Obviously, they're playing against, you can say, much weaker teams in Rwanda, Kenya, and Uganda. But to see the way that they performed against Tunisia should just show you that they don't care who you are. Pedigree does not work with them. So I think that, they're also one of the dark horses of this tournament. And so against the Gambia, I think it's going to be an interesting game because also the Gambia, they have a lot of confidence after beating Mauritania in their first ever AFCON appearance. But they also have very quality players who ply their trade in most of Europe. And so that experience is sort of going to come into handy when they play against Mali. I think it's going to be a very close game and maybe another 1-0 scoreline that we'll see in this tournament. And for Tunisia, I attended their training just yesterday in Limbe, and so the way that they were focused and trying to get the job done, get together. Yes, they lost the appeal to have the game replayed against Mali, but the experience that they got last month in the FIFA Arab Cup in Qatar, I think is going to help them to stay focused and try to see if they can go all the way to the final.
Yeah, very exciting games coming up tomorrow in Group F. Now, James, you're going to be headed to Limbe to follow those games for us, but right now you are in front of Team Algeria's bus in Douala. They're also playing tomorrow along with the rest of Group E, and the stakes are quite high for Algeria, aren't they?
They are absolutely, Alison. I am just in front of their bus here. And Algeria, who got off to a really difficult start, a goalless draw, not something that you would expect from the defending champions, of course. And we've been speaking to some of the staff from the team. And of course, that did affect them, but they are not losing any hope in that. They're definitely determined to keep going. They just said that this was something that does happen. They remain on that brilliant unbeaten run, but it doesn't mean that they can't go forward and do more. That game, of course, did take place at 2 p.m. When it's scorching hot pretty much anywhere around the country here in Cameroon, and that's been subject to controversy for many teams. Senegal have played twice at that time. Sadio Mane has come out and just expressed his discontent at how some teams seem to be favorited, he says, compared to others. Now, tomorrow, Algeria will have the later slot. They'll be on at 8 p.m. So we will expect to see more more from them, and that'll be very important for them to finally be able to get some points, some more points in there, shall we say, so that they can actually start to really defend their title if they want to try and go further in this tournament. Now, after that, Ivory Coast take on Sierra Leone. Ivory Coast, who impressed once again and who also have a brilliant squad out there, some very, very quality players. But let's not forget that Sierra Leone is that team that held Algeria to that goalless draw. So plenty to come up, but just to note that third game in there, the third match day game in their group, we'll see Algeria face off against Ivory Coast. That's set to be the possible decider, and that will be a very, very interesting game to follow after that.
Much to come tomorrow. I do want to end with a word from both of you about the overall ambiance at this tournament so far. Usher, this is the third AFCON that you've covered, and it's faced a number of challenges, including the coronavirus pandemic. Does it feel different to you from previous tournaments?
Well, obviously it feels different because here you have to, get a COVID-19 test result that is negative before you stadium. You have to wear masks, so that almost, affects the way that, people attend the games. But generally speaking, looking at Cameroonians, the tickets have also been expensive, $7 for the cheapest one. That, makes it a little bit difficult for them to go to the stadium. But that's only in Yaoundé, as far as I've observed. When you look at the games today in Garoua, which is just 70 kilometers from Nigeria, you see that there was a huge turn-up, and that's where the Super Eagles are based, and we'll hope to see more fans, coming through to the stadium to support them as they progress with the tournament, because as it stands, they could finish top of that group and stay there for the round of 16, and that's also another opportunity for them to see. But in Yaoundé, you see more fans attending in the fan zones, not really going to Olembe or to the Ahmadou Ahidjo Stadium, which is a bit absurd. But as of today, there's been a statement from the government of Cameroon that schools will close at 12 p.m. and government offices will close at 1 p.m. on match days when Cameroon is playing. So we hope that the numbers will go up eventually.
Yeah, sure. You mentioned that there really haven't been that many people at these games in the stadiums. James, could you tell us quickly what your experience has been of the ambiance so far?
Yeah, well, we definitely, that ambiance is here around the country. This is a country that breathes football. But indeed, the stadiums were very, very empty at first. They're starting to fill up slowly and shortly. But that statement from the government and that decision from the president should hopefully bring more fans in. We'll have to see if that actually does happen. But one of the other issues that does add to it is that many of the stadiums around here are quite far outside of the city centre, meaning that people living there have to actually get there. So added to the price of what is a pretty expensive ticket compared to a standard championship game here does make all the more expensive. So hopefully we're going to see more fans at the stadiums, because it's nice for people to watch, it's nice for the people there, and it's of course also nice for the players to be encouraged by everyone in a full stadium.
Yeah, hopefully we will start to see much fuller stadiums going forward. That brings us to the end of tonight's show, but I want to thank both of you, James Vasina and Usher Komugisha. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on France 24. We will, of course, be back with the latest on Sunday evening at around 11:40 local time in Yaoundé and Paris. Until then, do stay tuned for more news here on France 24.